The morning sun cast long shadows across Haven Colony as Sarah Chun checked her rifle for the third time. Something felt wrong in the air today. The usual chatter of alien children playing in the settlement's central garden had gone quiet, replaced by an unsettling silence that made her skin crawl. Sarah had been hired as security for this backwater colony 6 months ago. Most of the settlers were Kithera, peaceful herbivores whose idea of conflict involved heated debates about crop rotation. They paid well enough, and the work was easy. Too easy, she was beginning to realize. "Miss Sarah," a small voice called out from behind a cluster of purple, flowering bushes. Zika poked his furry head up, his large amber eyes bright with curiosity. The Kithera cub was barely 3 cycles old, equivalent to a human 7-year-old, and had attached himself to Sarah like a shadow since her arrival. "What did I tell you about staying close to the main buildings?" Sarah said, though her tone was gentle. Zika's parents had been killed in a transport accident 2 months ago, and the other colonists had unofficially adopted him. Sarah found herself looking after him more often than not. "I heard strange sound from the forest," Zika whispered, his ears twitching nervously. "Big sounds. Scary sounds." Sarah's blood ran cold. She grabbed her rifle and activated her comm unit. "Command, this is Chun. I need all colonists to report to the central shelter immediately. This is not a drill." The response crackled through static. "Chun, what's your status?" "We're picking up multiple unknown signatures approaching from the north." "Just get everyone to safety," Sarah barked, already moving toward Zika. She scooped the small alien into her arms. "We're going to play a game, little guy. We need to get to the shelter as fast as we can, and you need to be very, very quiet." Zika nodded solemnly, wrapping his small arms around Sarah's neck. She could feel his tiny heart beating rapidly against her chest. The first explosion shook the ground before they made it halfway to the shelter. Sarah stumbled, but kept running as the distinctive whine of Zephyrian attack ships filled the air. The raiders had found them. "Why are they attacking us?" Zika whimpered. "We don't hurt anyone." Sarah's jaw tightened. The Zephyrians were slavers, pure and simple. They targeted peaceful colonies like this one specifically because the inhabitants couldn't fight back. What they couldn't enslave, they killed for sport. Another explosion, closer this time. Sarah dove behind a storage building as debris rained down around them. Through the smoke, she could see the distinctive purple armor of Zephyrian ground troops advancing through the colony's outer perimeter. Sarah to command. "What's our evac status?" "Negative on evac. They've jammed our communications. Colonial defense won't know what happened here until it's too late." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of inevitability settling on her shoulders. She'd been in situations like this before, back during her military days. Sometimes there was no good choice, only the choice you could live with. "Listen to me very carefully, Zika," she whispered, setting the cub down and looking directly into his eyes. "I need you to run to the old mining tunnel behind the water treatment plant. You remember where that is?" Zika nodded, his eyes wide with terror. "Good. You hide there, and don't come out until the sun sets twice. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you stay hidden. Promise me." "What about you?" Sarah pulled a small beacon from her utility belt and pressed it into Zika's tiny hands. "If I don't come for you after 2 sunsets, you press this button. It will send a distress signal to the nearest human patrol. They'll come for you. I don't want to leave you. I know, little one. But sometimes the adults have to do scary things so the children can be safe." The sound of Zephyrian voices was getting closer. Sarah could make out at least 4 different speakers, which meant a full raiding squad. She checked her ammunition count. 2 clips plus the one loaded in her rifle. Against 4 trained raiders in powered armor, it wouldn't be enough. But it might be enough to buy time. "Go. Now." She gave Zika a gentle push toward the back of the building. "Remember what I told you. 2 sunsets." Zika hesitated for a moment, then darted away into the shadows. Sarah watched until she was sure he was clear, then turned her attention to the approaching raiders. The first Zephyrian rounded the corner 3 minutes later. Sarah put 2 rounds center mass, punching through the weak points in his armor. He went down hard, his weapon clattering across the ground. Contact! Human arm! The remaining raiders scattered, taking cover behind debris and abandoned equipment. Sarah smiled grimly. She made them cautious, which would slow them down. Every second was precious now. The battle lasted 18 minutes. Sarah moved from position to position, using her knowledge of the colony's layout to stay one step ahead of the raiders. She managed to take down 2 more before her ammunition ran low. The end came when she found herself cornered in the colony's main square. The last Zephyrian raider, larger than the others and wearing the insignia of a squad leader, stepped into the open with a plasma cannon charged and ready. "Stupid human," he sneered in accented standard. "You could have lived as a slave. Now you die for nothing." Sarah's hand went to the grenade on her belt. Her last resort, meant for exactly this situation. She could see movement in her peripheral vision and realized with horror that Zika hadn't made it to the tunnel. The small cub was hiding behind an overturned cargo container, watching everything with those wide, terrified eyes. The Zephyrian followed her gaze and laughed. "A cub. Perfect. Young ones always bring the best price." Sarah's decision was instantaneous. She pulled the pin on the grenade and sprinted directly at the raider. The Zephyrian's eyes widened in shock as he realized what was happening. "For what it's worth," Sarah gasped as she crashed into the armored figure, "it was never for nothing." The explosion tore through the square, turning the Zephyrian raider into scattered atoms and throwing Sarah's broken body against the nearest wall. But even as darkness closed in around her, she could see Zika's small form still hidden behind the container, alive and whole. The cub crept out from his hiding place several minutes later, his small hands shaking as he approached Sarah's still form. She was barely breathing, her body broken, but her eyes still aware. "Sarah," Zika whispered, tears streaming down his furry cheeks. Sarah's lips moved, and Zika had to lean close to hear her words. They were spoken in a language he didn't understand, but somehow their meaning was crystal clear in his young mind. "They think they know what humans are capable of." Sarah's voice was barely a breath. "They think we're just another client species, just another group of prey animals." Her hand found Zika's small paw and squeezed with the last of her strength. "But we're not prey, little one. We're the thing that hunts in the dark. And when my people find out what happened here..." Sarah's eyes hardened with a fierce light that made Zika shiver. "We'll hunt them all. Every last one. Across every world, through every system. We'll hunt them until there's nothing left but the memory of their screaming." Sarah's hand went limp, but her words seemed to hang in the air around them like a promise carved in stone. Zika clutched the beacon she'd given him and stumbled toward the mining tunnel, those final words echoing in his mind. The Zephyrians had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were raiders attacking helpless colonists. But Sarah Chun hadn't been a colonist. She'd been a human. And humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, had very long memories when it came to protecting their own. 2 days later, when the first human patrol ship arrived at Haven Colony, they found only one survivor. A small Kithera cub clutching a military beacon and speaking fluent human curse words. When they asked him what had happened, Zika looked up with eyes that had aged beyond his years. "The human lady said her people would hunt them all," he whispered. "She promised." The patrol captain knelt down to Zika's level, his face grim. "What was her name, son?" "Sarah Chun. She saved me." The captain's expression darkened. He'd heard that name before during the colony wars. Sarah Chun, former lieutenant in the human colonial marines, decorated veteran of 7 major campaigns, known for her tactical brilliance and absolute refusal to leave anyone behind. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "you need to see this." The captain walked over to view the tactical display. Scattered across the colony square were the remains of 4 Zephyrian raiders, their armor marked with the insignia of the Crimson Talon slaving syndicate. "How many colonies has this syndicate hit in the past year?" the captain asked quietly. 17 confirmed, sir. All peaceful settlements, minimal defensive capabilities. The captain nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. He activated his long-range communicator and sent a priority message to Fleet Command. The response came back within hours, encoded with authentication marks that made his blood run cold. Operation Righteous Fury was authorized. Every human military asset within 50 light-years was being repositioned. The Colonial Defense Force was mobilizing for the first time since the Unity Wars. The Zephyrians had killed one of their own. More than that, they'd killed someone who had died protecting an alien child. In human culture, there were few crimes worse than harming those who couldn't protect themselves. As the captain watched the first wave of human warships drop out of hyperspace around Haven Colony, he thought about Sarah Chen's final words. She'd promised they would hunt them all. Looking at the fleet assembling above them, he realized it wasn't a promise anymore. It was a certainty. 10 years had passed since Haven Colony, and Zika stood before the memorial wall in the Human Colonial Defense Headquarters on Terra Nova. His amber eyes traced the names etched in black stone, finding the one that had shaped his entire life. Lieutenant Sarah Chun, Colonial Marines, killed in action protecting civilian populations. At 13 cycles old now, Zika had grown into a tall, lean Kithara with the distinctive golden fur patterns that marked him as approaching adulthood. But it was his eyes that drew attention wherever he went. They held a hardness that his people rarely possessed, a coldness that spoke of things seen and remembered. You visit her memorial every time you're on station, observed Admiral Rebecca Walsh, approaching from behind. The human woman was in her 50s, with graying hair and scars that marked her as a veteran of the ongoing Zephyrian conflict. She died for me, Zika said simply, not turning around. The least I can do is remember. She died for more than just you, Walsh replied, moving to stand beside him. Her sacrifice changed everything. Before Haven Colony, the galaxy saw humans as just another species. Useful allies, decent fighters, but nothing special. Zika finally looked at the Admiral. Over the past decade, he'd been raised primarily by human military families, shuttled between different colonies and stations as the war with the Zephyrians escalated. He learned human languages, human customs, human ways of thinking about conflict and justice. What changed, he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Walsh smiled grimly. They saw what we do when our people die protecting others. They saw what we're really capable of when we stop holding back. She gestured to the massive tactical display that dominated the headquarters main floor. Red markers showed Zephyrian-controlled systems, while blue indicated human territory. What caught Zika's attention immediately was how the blue had expanded dramatically over the past few years. When Sarah-chan died, the Colonial Defense Force had maybe 300 active warships spread across 40 systems. Walsh continued. Today, we have over 2,000 ships in active service, with production facilities running at maximum capacity. The other species helped build those ships, Zika pointed out. True, but they helped because they finally understood what humans bring to an alliance. It's not our technology or our numbers. Walsh's eyes hardened. It's our complete inability to let things go when someone we care about is hurt. Zika thought about that. In the years since Sarah's death, he'd watched the human response to the Zephyrian threat evolve from defensive actions to systematic dismantling of their entire empire. Every slaving raid was answered with devastating retaliation. Every captured colony was liberated with overwhelming force. The humans didn't just win battles. They made sure their enemies understood that attacking human-protected worlds carried consequences that would follow them across the galaxy. The Zephyrians made a fundamental miscalculation, Walsh continued. They thought Sarah was just another hired gun protecting some backwater colony. They didn't understand that she represented something much larger. What do you mean? Come with me. There's something you need to see. Admiral Walsh led Zika through a series of secure corridors to a restricted section of the base he'd never been allowed to enter. The guards at every checkpoint knew them both by sight, and waved them through without question. They eventually reached a massive chamber filled with holographic displays showing star maps, fleet positions, and tactical assessments. Dozens of human officers worked at various stations, coordinating what appeared to be a galaxy-spanning military operation. "This is the Strategic Command Center," Walsh explained. "Everything you see here exists because of what happened at Haven Colony. Every ship, every soldier, every alliance we've forged with other species traces back to the moment Sarah Chun decided that protecting you was worth her life." Zika stared at the displays in awe. He could see human fleets positioned throughout dozens of star systems, many of them working alongside ships from other species. Kithara agricultural vessels provided supplies. Rigelian engineering ships supported construction efforts. Even a normally isolationist Valex had contributed advanced sensor technology. "But why?" Zika asked. "I understand humans wanting revenge for Sarah, but why would other species commit so much to help?" Walsh smiled. "Because they finally understood what human protection actually means. For centuries, most species have operated on the principle of proportional response. Someone attacks you, you defend yourself, and maybe strike back once or twice to discourage future attacks. Humans don't work that way." She pointed to a display showing the former Zephyrian core worlds, where once the tactical map had shown dozens of heavily fortified raider bases. Now there were empty systems marked with cleanup operations. When the Zephyrians killed Sarah and attacked those colonists, they declared war on the concept of human protection. Not just war against humans, but against the idea that we could keep anyone safe. So we had to prove them wrong by destroying their entire civilization, by making it clear that attacking anyone under human protection would cost more than any possible gain. The Rigelians understood this first. They've been dealing with Zephyrian raids for decades, losing entire colonies to slavers while their government filed diplomatic protests. After Haven Colony, they offered to provide engineering support in exchange for human protection of their border worlds. Zika nodded slowly. He'd grown up hearing stories from refugee camps and liberated colonies. The humans didn't just drive off attackers. They hunted them back to their home bases and eliminated the threat permanently. Other species had started requesting human protection for their own vulnerable settlements. "The Kithara Assembly contacted us next," Walsh continued. "Your own people's leadership realized that humans would go to extraordinary lengths to protect those they'd sworn to defend. They offered agricultural support and medical aid in exchange for defense agreements. And now?" Zika gestured to the massive operation surrounding them. "Now we have a coalition of 37 different species, all united behind a simple principle. Attacking civilians should cost everything." Admiral Walsh led Zika to a smaller briefing room where several other officers were waiting. The room's central holodeck displayed a three-dimensional map showing the last remaining Zephyrian strongholds. "Which brings us to why you're here," Walsh said, taking a seat at the table. "We've located the Crimson Talon command base, the same syndicate that attacked Haven Colony." Zika's hands clenched involuntarily. Over the years, human intelligence services had tracked down most of the individual raiders responsible for the attack. Some had been captured and tried. Others had died in subsequent battles. But the leadership of the Crimson Talon had remained elusive, hidden in heavily fortified bases in the Outer Rim. "We've been planning this operation for 3 years," Walsh continued. "Complete elimination of their command structure, liberation of their slave populations, and dismantling of their entire organization. Why are you telling me this? Because you're not just a survivor anymore, Zika. You're a symbol. The child Sarah Chun died to protect, raised by the human military, trained in our tactics and strategies. The other species in our coalition see you as proof that our protection means something." One of the other officers, a grizzled veteran with cybernetic implants, leaned forward. "We want you to be part of the strike team that takes down their command base." Zika felt a chill run through his fur. He'd trained with human military units for years, learning combat techniques and tactical planning. But this would be different. This would be going after the specific group responsible for Sarah's death. You don't have to decide now, Walsh said gently. But understand what this represents. Sarah Chan died, making a promise that humans would hunt down everyone responsible for attacking that colony. We've kept that promise for 10 years. This operation completes it. Zika stared at the tactical display, showing the Crimson Talon base. It was a fortress built into an asteroid field, surrounded by defensive stations and patrolled by hundreds of ships. Taking it would require everything the Coalition had built over the past decade. Sarah told me something before she died, Zika said quietly. She said humans weren't prey animals. She said you were the things that hunt in the dark. That's exactly what we are, the cybernetic officer replied. The question is whether you want to hunt with us. Zika thought about the scared cub who had watched Sarachan sacrifice herself to save his life. He thought about the promise she'd whispered with her dying breath. He thought about the thousands of other innocents who had suffered at Zephyrian hands over the years. When do we leave? He asked. Walsh smiled. The fleet assembles in 72 hours. Welcome to Operation Final Hunt, Zika. Let's go finish what Sarah started. As they left the briefing room, Zika caught one final glimpse of the memorial wall through a corridor window. Sarah's name seemed to gleam in the artificial light, as if approving of the decision he'd just made. The galaxy was about to learn that human promises were not forgotten, even after a decade, especially when those promises were made by the dying to protect the innocent. The Crimson Talon had killed Sarah Chun, thinking they were eliminating a minor threat. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. Human determination backed by interspecies cooperation on a scale never before seen in the galaxy. Soon, they would understand the full price of that mistake. The assembled fleet stretched across space like a constellation of death. 3,000 ships from 37 different species, all united behind a single purpose. At the center of the formation, the human dreadnought Sarah's Promise served as the flagship for Operation Final Hunt. Zika stood on the bridge beside Admiral Walsh, watching the tactical displays as the fleet prepared for the final assault on the Crimson Talon stronghold. His amber eyes reflected the glow of the screens, but his mind was focused on events from a decade ago. Nervous? Asked Captain Maria Santos, the ship's commanding officer. She was younger than Walsh, with the kind of confidence that came from winning battles against impossible odds. Focused, Zika replied. I've been preparing for this moment for 10 years. The past 3 days have been a blur of final preparations and strategic briefings. The Crimson Talon had built their fortress in the Veil Nebula, using the dense gas clouds and asteroid fields to hide their operations from Coalition forces. But human intelligence had finally pinpointed their exact location and, more importantly, confirmed that the original leadership from the Haven Colony attack was still alive and commanding the facility. All fleet elements report ready, announced the communications officer. Coalition forces are standing by for final authorization. Admiral Walsh opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Admiral Walsh to all ships. 10 years ago, a human colonial marine named Sarah Chun died, protecting an innocent child from Zephyrian raiders. She died believing that her sacrifice would be answered. Today, we make good on that promise. Zika felt a chill run through his fur as the Admiral's words echoed across 3,000 ships. Around him, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency that marked experienced combat veterans. These people have been fighting the Zephyrians for a decade, liberating colonies and hunting down slaver syndicates across the galaxy. Primary Strike Force, begin your approach, Walsh ordered. Remember, our objective is complete elimination of the Crimson Talon leadership and liberation of all slave populations. No quarter for slavers. The first wave consisted of Rigelian stealth ships and human destroyers, moving through the asteroid field like ghosts. Zika watched their progress on the tactical display, remembering Sarah's final words. She had promised that humans would hunt their enemies across every world and through every system. The Crimson Talon had chosen their hiding place well. The asteroid fortress was massive, carved out of a planetoid, and reinforced with stolen military technology from a dozen different species. Defensive platforms surrounded it like a mechanical reef, each one capable of destroying entire squadrons. "Contact," reported the sensor operator. "Crimson Talon ships are moving to intercept." 300 raiders, various classes. Zika gripped the bridge railing as the first exchange of fire lit up the darkness. The Zephyrian raiders were skilled and experienced, but they were facing something they'd never encountered before, a coordinated assault by multiple species working as a unified force. Kithra agricultural ships had been converted into mobile supply depots, keeping the fleet's ammunition and fuel topped off during the extended battle. Valek's sensor ships provided targeting data that let coalition forces strike with pinpoint accuracy even through the nebula's interference. Rigelian engineering vessels coordinated repair efforts and tactical modifications in real time. But it was the human ships that led every assault, pushing forward with a relentless aggression that seemed to defy tactical logic. Zika had grown up around human military culture and understood what he was seeing. These people took personal offense at the idea of slavers operating anywhere in the galaxy. "Second wave, you are cleared for approach," Admiral Walsh ordered. "Begin bombardment of defensive platforms." The battle intensified as heavier ships moved into range. Zika watched Zephyrian defensive positions disappear under concentrated fire from human dreadnoughts and Rigelian siege cruisers. Each destroyed platform brought them closer to the fortress itself. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Crimson Talon Fortress. They want to negotiate." Walsh's expression hardened. "Put it through." The main display flickered, showing a Zephyrian in elaborate battle armor. Zika recognized the species' distinctive features: scaled purple skin, predatory yellow eyes, and razor-sharp teeth. This particular individual bore the scars of many battles and the insignia of high rank. "I am War Chief Krathos, commander of the Crimson Talon," the alien said in accented standard. "I propose a cessation of hostilities. We are willing to discuss terms." "The only terms are unconditional surrender," Walsh replied coldly. "Release all prisoners and prepare to be boarded." Krathos laughed, a harsh sound that made Zika's fur stand on end. "Foolish human, you think your little fleet frightens us? We have been raiding the galaxy for centuries while your species was still crawling in the mud of your homeworld." "That was before you made a mistake," Zika said, stepping forward so the war chief could see him clearly. "Do you remember Haven Colony? Do you remember a small settlement you attacked 10 years ago?" Krathos studied Zika with obvious confusion. "Many colonies have fallen to our raids. Alien. Why should one be significant?" "Because you killed someone important," Zika continued, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. "A human named Sarachun. She died protecting me." Recognition flickered in the war chief's eyes. "The stubborn female who refused to surrender. Yes, I remember. She cost me 3 good soldiers before we finally killed her." "You cost yourselves everything," Zika replied. "She made a promise before she died. She said humans would hunt you all across the galaxy until nothing remained but the memory of your screaming. Look around you, War Chief. Look at what that promise built." For the first time, uncertainty crossed Krathos's features. The tactical display behind him showed the devastating losses his forces had already sustained. Nearly half his defensive fleet was gone, and coalition forces were systematically dismantling his outer defenses. "This is impossible," Krathos snarled. "Humans are weak. They lack the will for proper warfare." Admiral Walsh laughed grimly. "You have no idea what humans are capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized." Sarachun was a colonial marine, war chief. "Do you know what that means?" "Another soldier. Nothing more. It means she was trained to protect civilians at any cost. It means her death created a debt that could only be paid in blood." Walsh's voice turned deadly cold. "It means that every human in this fleet takes her death personally." The transmission cut off as Krothos realized the situation was hopeless. Around the fortress, the remaining Zephyrian ships were throwing themselves into desperate attacks against overwhelming odds. But human tactics had evolved during the decade-long hunt for the Crimson Talon. Every ship in the Coalition fleet was a veteran of multiple campaigns, crewed by people who had made the destruction of slaver syndicates their life's work. "Fortress shields are down," reported the tactical officer. "All defensive platforms destroyed. The structure is open for boarding. Launch all assault teams, Walsh ordered. Remember, we want the leadership alive for questioning. Everyone else." She shrugged. "The galaxy will be better without them." Zika found himself assigned to boarding Team Alpha, led by Colonel Marcus Rodriguez, a veteran of dozens of anti-piracy operations. The team consisted of human marines, Rigelian combat engineers, and several Kithara who had volunteered for the assault. As their boarding shuttle approached the fortress, Rodriguez briefed the team on their objectives. "Intelligence indicates that War Chief Krothos and his senior staff are holed up in the Central Command section. Our job is to punch through their defenses and take them alive if possible." "What about the slaves?" asked one of the Kithara volunteers. "Secondary teams are handling rescue operations. Our priority is the command staff." Rodriguez checked his weapon one final time. "Remember, these are the same individuals who ordered the attack on Haven Colony. They chose to make this personal." The shuttle shook as it docked with the fortress. The airlock cycled, and the boarding team moved into the structure's corridors. What they found inside made Zika's blood run cold. The Crimson Talon had turned the asteroid into a monument to cruelty. Slave pens lined the outer sections, filled with beings from dozens of different species. The corridors were decorated with trophies taken from raided colonies, artwork, cultural artifacts, and worse things that Zika tried not to look at too closely. But it was the smell that affected him most. The scent of fear and desperation that hung in the recycled air, mixed with the distinctive odor of Zephyrian pheromones. This place reeked of suffering. "Contact front!" someone shouted as Zephyrian defenders opened fire from a barricaded corridor junction. The Marine squad responded with practiced efficiency, using superior training and coordination to systematically eliminate the defenders. Zika fought alongside them, using the combat skills he'd learned during his years with the human military. But this wasn't like training exercises. These Zephyrians were fighting for their lives, and they showed the desperate cunning that had made them successful raiders for so many years. The battle through the fortress corridors lasted 2 hours. Room by room, section by section, the Coalition forces advanced toward the central command area. Behind them, rescue teams began evacuating the slave populations while demolition specialists planted charges to destroy the fortress permanently. Finally, boarding Team Alpha reached the heavily fortified entrance to the command section. Beyond the blast doors, sensors detected dozens of life forms, including the distinctive biosignature of War Chief Krothos himself. "This is it," Rodriguez said, studying the tactical display. "Heavy defenses, automated systems, and approximately 40 defenders. They're going to make us pay for every meter." "Good," Zika replied quietly. "It wouldn't be justice if it came easy." The final assault began with Rigelian breaching charges that turned the blast doors into twisted scrap metal. Human Marines poured through the opening, supported by covering fire from Kithar marksmen and Rigelian heavy weapon specialists. Zika found himself face to face with War Chief Krothos in the command center itself. The Zephyrian leader had abandoned his elaborate armor for practical combat gear, but he still carried himself with the arrogance that had marked his species' approach to warfare for centuries. "The stubborn cub," Krothos sneered, raising a plasma rifle. "Still alive after all these years. Your human protector died for nothing." "She died for everything," Zika replied, his own weapon steady in his hands. "Look around you. This entire operation exists because of her sacrifice. 3,000 ships, 37 species, all united behind the promise she made." "Impossible. Species do not unite for individual deaths." Zika smiled, and for the first time in years, it was Sarah's smile, fierce and uncompromising. You really don't understand humans at all. They don't just fight for territory or resources. They fight for principles. And the principle that innocent people deserve protection is worth any cost. The war chief's shot went wide as coalition forces overwhelmed his remaining defenders. In minutes, the command center was secure, and Krothos found himself surrounded by the very coalition his raids had helped create. As they secured the prisoners, Zika walked to the command center's main viewport. Outside, the remains of the Crimson Talon fleet drifted in expanding debris fields. Rescue shuttles moved between the slave pens, evacuating thousands of beings who would finally return to their homeworlds. Admiral Walsh's voice crackled over his comm unit. All objectives secured. The Crimson Talon Syndicate is officially extinct. Sarah's promise has been fulfilled. Zika touched the small memorial pennant he wore, engraved with Sarah Chin's name and service record. Around him, representatives of 37 different species worked together to process prisoners and coordinate the massive rescue operation. 10 years ago, Sarah had whispered that humans would hunt their enemies across every world and through every system. She had promised that her people would never forget, never forgive, never stop until justice was complete. Today, the galaxy learned what human promises were worth. As the fortress erupted in carefully placed demolition charges, erasing the last physical trace of the Crimson Talon from the universe, Zika allowed himself to believe that somewhere, somehow, Sarah Chun was finally at peace. Her promise had been kept. Her sacrifice had been answered. And the child she died protecting had grown up to help deliver the justice she demanded with her final breath. The hunt was over. The galaxy was a little safer. And 37 species had learned what it meant to have humans as allies when innocents needed protection. It was exactly what she would have wanted.